If you were paying attention to all of the high-level national security and foreign policy appointments that President-elect Biden made this week, then you probably caught the name John Kerry as climate czar. What makes his new position stand out is the fact that Biden's linking the battle against climate change to his national security agenda. Think about that. Joining me with more on that significance is the author of Bloomberg Green's Risky Climate column, Gernot Wagner. Gernot, it's great to have you on the show today. Thanks so much for joining us. What will the future of climate politics look like under a Biden administration?
Bright and shiny, well, we are basically emerging from this long darkness, right? It's been a long 4 years, 3.5 years or so. Yes, we are basically being welcomed back, the US, being welcomed back to the international stage, right? Every call Joe Biden has been having mentions climate, every call with with other world leaders. That's a breath of fresh air.
So what does the appointment of John Kerry as climate czar tell us?
It tells us that we are taking climate seriously, right? This is a ministerial level appointment, so he has a seat at every table. That's significant, right? So it's not everything, right? Just rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement isn't the solution, isn't the final step, but it's certainly a very, very important first step.
You had a piece last week that says, don't discount states for U.S. climate progress. And it talks about the importance that states took over the last 4 years under the Trump administration when the federal government did not take the charge when it came to climate change. Talk about the backstop that these states served and why California is a big deal, but it's not the only state that was a backstop.
Exactly, right? So for the last 4 years, basically, we've had states as the backstop, right? 29 states have renewable portfolio standards. Several states have their own carbon neutrality goals. And this is not just California and New York. It's Louisiana has a goal to be carbon neutral by 2050. New York, of course, does too. So does California, right? So these individual states' actions are significant. But of course, it takes the federal government not just to coordinate, but to lead the charge.
Okay, so that raises the question of what President-elect Biden will do if the Republicans maintain control of the Senate come January. What will he actually be able to accomplish if Mitch McConnell is Senate Majority Leader?
Well, point one, we do need the Senate, right? So there's a reason why, let's say, the American Petroleum Association Institute, API, is currently in Georgia, is very active in Georgia, right? So yes, step one, January 5th matters. Point two, though, there are lots and lots of actions the administration can take, both internationally, that's where John Kerry comes in, and domestically, where John Kerry is also important, but frankly, right, we are waiting for many more appointments within the administration with a focus on domestic policy that will take significant executive actions here domestically.
Well, John Kerry and AOC, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they led a task force that identified policy moves on climate and energy that don't actually need help from Congress. What exactly does that mean, and how does that actually show the power the federal government can have, or I should say the executive branch can have without the legislative branch?
What we just saw the last 4 years was dozens and dozens of steps, executive steps, no Congress involved, of removing certain rules, withdrawing regulations, retrenchment, basically taking steps back on climate. What is not going to happen? Well, step one is reverse those decisions, those that can be reversed very easily, and many of them can. Step two, of course, is then to use the power of the federal government proactively, actively. So this John Kerry AOC commission identified 57 steps that the US government can take without Congress. Right? And I don't know how many of these 56 are going to happen on January 20th or the first 100 days, but many will. And that, of course, is a very, very hopeful step.
How, Gernot, can you explain the disconnect between what the states have decided to do when it comes to their own climate and policy goals versus what the federal government has done over the last few years? Given what you said about the states, there does seem to be widespread support throughout the country for these aggressive climate moves.
There is, and I guess I wouldn't call them aggressive. I would call them, very, very sensible and reasonable steps in the right direction. But yeah, right. So the closer you get to actual people experiencing the consequences of their actions, the closer you get to the drive to act. That is one of the more significant lessons here, right? This is sort of Montana or Louisiana having these carbon neutrality goals, or Texas, right? So it turns out there's a lot of wind in Texas. Well, guess what? If you're a farmer, a rancher in Texas, well, you may want to have a wind turbine and take advantage of that. Well, that is happening at the state level, even though, right, at the federal level, you have our two Texas senators who are staunchly opposed to any climate action.
Bloomberg Green columnist Gernot Wagner, thanks for joining Quick Take. Have a great Thanksgiving.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quick Take now for insight in an instant.